The rooftop bar was buzzing with the kind of energy that only comes when 20-somethings mix expensive cocktails with social media validation. Portland's skyline stretched out before us, rain-slicked and gleaming under the neon glow of Friday night. I nursed my third beer, watching my wife Maribel work the crowd like she was collecting Instagram followers in real time. "Cole, you're being antisocial again," she'd whispered earlier, her perfectly contoured face twisted in that expression I'd learned to recognize as barely contained irritation. "These are my colleagues. Try to look like you're having fun." Fun? Right. Watching a bunch of influencer marketing vultures discuss engagement rates while pretending their lives weren't built on selling overpriced skincare to teenagers. I'm a software QA analyst. I find bugs for a living. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was surrounded by the biggest bugs of all. "Truth game." Sienna Clark's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a knife through butter. Maribel's best friend since college, Sienna had the kind of sharp beauty that made men stupid and women nervous. She was holding up a bottle of expensive vodka like it was a trophy. "Come on, everyone. Let's make this interesting." The crowd gathered in a loose circle on the outdoor couches. I found myself wedged between some guy named Brad, who wouldn't shut up about his crypto portfolio, and Maribel, who was already 3 cosmos deep and giggling at everything. "The rules are simple," Sienna announced, her green eyes scanning the group with predatory precision. "Truth or dare, but with consequences. Lie and you drink. Refuse a dare and you drink twice." The game started innocently enough. Someone admitted to sliding into their ex's DMs. Another confessed to buying fake followers. The usual millennial sins that felt scandalous after enough alcohol. Then Sienna's turn came around again. "Truth," she said, locking eyes with me across the circle. Something in her expression made my stomach clench. "Have you ever kissed someone in this circle?" asked Jessica, one of Maribel's work friends. Sienna smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Not yet," she said, rising from her seat with fluid grace. "But that's about to change." Before I could process what was happening, she was moving toward me. Before I could react, her hands were on my face. Before I could protest, her lips were on mine. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt like 3 hours. The rooftop fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic below. I could feel every pair of eyes burning into us. I could hear Maribel's sharp intake of breath, the kind that comes right before a scream. And then she did scream. "What the hell, Sienna?" Maribel's voice cracked like a whip. She was on her feet, trembling with rage, her face flushed red beneath her carefully applied makeup. "What is wrong with you?" Sienna stepped back from me, completely calm. She smoothed down her black dress and picked up her drink, taking a slow sip while everyone stared. "I only did what you did first," she said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "What are you talking about?" Maribel's voice was higher now, desperate. "I didn't kiss anyone." Sienna reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The screen was bright in the dim lighting of the rooftop bar. "Location services are wonderful, aren't they?" she said conversationally. "Especially when you're sharing them with someone you trust. Like your best friend." She held up the phone so the circle could see. "Here's Maribel at the Marriott downtown, Tuesday afternoon. Same time as Landon." She swiped. Thursday evening, his apartment, while she told me she was at a client meeting. Landon Walsh, Sienna's boyfriend of 2 years. I knew him vaguely. Trust fund kid, worked in some vague startup capacity, drove a Tesla he couldn't actually afford. "And here," Sienna continued, swiping again, "are the text messages. Would you like me to read them out loud, or should I just show everyone the photos you sent him?" The bottom dropped out of my world. Maribel was making sounds now, not quite words, just desperate noises like a trapped animal. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her drink. The glass shattered on the concrete with a sound like breaking bones. That was the last thing she managed to say, Sienna announced to the stunned crowd, before the truth came out. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. Not from the alcohol. I was stone sober now, adrenaline burning through my system like acid. The conversations around us had faded completely. Everyone was staring at us like we were a car accident they couldn't look away from. "Cole," Maribel started, reaching for me. "Cole, please, let me explain." I stepped back. Her hand fell short, grasping at empty air. "How long?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, emotionless. "It's not what you think." "How long?" Sienna answered for her. 4 months, since that conference in Seattle, the one where she said she was too busy to call you back. 4 months. A third of our marriage. While I was debugging software and planning our future, she was planning her lies. I turned and walked toward the rooftop exit. Behind me, I could hear Maribel calling my name, her voice breaking. I could hear the murmur of the crowd as they processed what they'd just witnessed. I could hear Sienna's laugh, cold and satisfied. What I couldn't hear was any reason to stay. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel doors, pale, hollow-eyed, looking every bit like the fool I'd apparently been for months. The taste of Sienna's lip gloss lingered on my mouth, artificial cherry mixed with betrayal. My phone buzzed incessantly, text after text from Maribel. "Cole, please come back. It's not what you think. Let me explain. I love you. Please don't do this." I turned the phone off and shoved it in my pocket. The rain hit me as soon as I stepped outside, Portland's perpetual drizzle that seemed to seep into your bones. I walked without direction, my dress shoes splashing through puddles, my button-down shirt slowly soaking through. The city looked different now, like someone had adjusted the contrast. Everything seemed sharper, more real, more ugly. I ended up at Jake's gym. It was nearly midnight, but I knew he'd still be there. Jake Lyons ran the kind of old-school boxing gym that stayed open as long as there were people who needed to hit something. He was my oldest friend, the only person I knew who'd never bullshitted me about anything. The gym smelled like sweat and leather and honest work. Jake was in the office doing paperwork by the light of a single desk lamp. He looked up when I walked in, took one look at my face, and reached into his desk drawer for a bottle of bourbon. "Wife or job?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses. "Wife." "Cheating?" 4 months, with her best friend's boyfriend. Jake whistled low. "That's some soap opera shit right there." He handed me a glass. "How'd you find out?" I told him about the party, about Sienna's kiss, about the evidence she'd displayed like trophies. Jake listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or grunting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "So, what's the plan?" he finally asked. "Plan? Come on, Cole. You're the most methodical snake I know. You debug software for a living. You don't just accept broken code, you find the problem and you fix it. So what's the plan?" I stared into my bourbon. "I don't know. Divorce, I guess. Split everything up. Move on." Jake snorted. "That's not a plan. That's giving up." He leaned forward. "You want some advice? Do I have a choice?" When someone screws you over, you got 2 options. You can roll over and take it, or you can make sure they regret it. Your wife didn't just cheat on you. She humiliated you in front of a room full of people. That kind of disrespect doesn't get forgiven. It gets answered. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Jake. Who said anything about hurting? I'm talking about consequences. Natural, logical consequences. His smile was sharp. You want payback? Don't get mad. Get smart. I left the gym at 2 a.m. with Jake's words echoing in my head. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the streetlights like broken glass. I walked home slowly, my mind already working through the problem like it was a particularly complex bug in the code. Our apartment was dark when I got there. Maribel's car wasn't in the parking lot. I let myself in and stood in the doorway, looking at the space we'd shared for 3 years. Everything looked the same, but it felt different now. Contaminated. I went to my laptop and powered it up. If there was one thing I was good at, it was finding evidence. Maribel wasn't particularly tech-savvy. She used the same password for everything, synced all her devices to the same cloud account, and had location sharing turned on for half a dozen apps. It took me less than an hour to piece together the whole sordid timeline. The affair had started exactly when Sienna said, 4 months ago, at a marketing conference in Seattle. I found the hotel receipts, the Uber rides to Landon's apartment, the charges at restaurants I'd never been to. I found the photos she'd sent him, the messages that made my stomach turn. I found evidence of lies I hadn't even known she'd told. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. She'd been at his place drinking wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Client emergency. Might have to travel tomorrow. She'd spent the weekend at his apartment while he was out of town, posting Instagram stories from home that were actually taken in his bedroom. Girls' night with Sienna. Probably be out late. Sienna had been in San Francisco that night. Maribel had been with Landon at some upscale hotel downtown. The most damning evidence was in her Google Photos account. Months of pictures she'd never shown me, never posted publicly. Pictures of her and Landon at restaurants, at his apartment, at weekend getaways I'd thought she was taking with her girlfriends. In every photo, she looked happy. Happier than she'd looked with me in months. I screenshot everything, every message, every photo, every receipt. I organized it all into folders with timestamps and locations. If I was going down, I was taking the truth with me. My phone buzzed. I'd turned it back on without thinking. 17 missed calls from Maribel, 12 from various numbers I didn't recognize, probably people from the party, and 1 text from an unknown number. This is Sienna. We should talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Pioneer Courthouse Square. Come alone. I stared at the message for a long time. Sienna Clark, the woman who'd just detonated my marriage with a single kiss and a smartphone full of evidence. What could she possibly want to talk about? I typed back, "Why?" The response came immediately, "Because this isn't over, and you're going to want to hear what I have to say." Outside, I heard a car door slam. Maribel was home. I heard Maribel's key in the lock at 3:17 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, surrounded by printed screenshots and a legal pad covered in notes. The evidence of her betrayal spread out like a crime scene investigation. She came in quietly, probably hoping I was asleep. When she saw me sitting there, she froze in the doorway like a deer in headlights. "Cole," she whispered, "you're awake." Hard to sleep when your wife's been sleeping with her best friend's boyfriend for 4 months. She flinched at the profanity. I never swore at her. I never raised my voice. I was always the reasonable one, the calm one, the one who talked things through rationally. Not tonight. "Can we please talk about this?" She moved toward me slowly like I might bolt. "I know how this looks, but what, Maribel? But it's not what it looks like? But you can explain?" I gestured to the papers scattered across the table. "Because I've been doing some research. Want to see what I found?" Her face went white as she recognized the screenshots. Photos of her and Landon at restaurants, hotel receipts, text messages that left nothing to the imagination. "You went through my phone?" Her voice was shaking now, but I couldn't tell if it was from fear or anger. "I went through our shared accounts. The ones you apparently forgot were shared. I picked up a receipt from the Marriott downtown. Remember this? Tuesday afternoon? You told me you were at a client meeting. Funny thing about hotels. They timestamp everything." She sank into the chair across from me, her perfect composure finally cracking. "I never meant for it to happen." "Which part? The cheating or getting caught?" "The cheating. God, Cole, do you think I planned this? Do you think I wanted to hurt you?" I think you wanted to sleep with Landon Walsh more than you wanted to stay faithful to your husband. Everything else is just details." She started crying then, the kind of ugly crying that ruins makeup and makes your nose run. A part of me wanted to comfort her, the way I had 1,000 times before, but that part was getting smaller by the minute. "It just happened," she sobbed. "We were at the conference and we were drinking and he was there and you were here and you decided to take your clothes off in his hotel room. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Maribel? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been living a double life for a third of our marriage." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "I tried to end it, multiple times, but he said he'd tell Sienna, and I couldn't." "So this is blackmail now? He forced you to keep sleeping with him?" "No, yes, I don't know." She was falling apart, and I was watching it happen with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. "It's complicated, Cole. You don't understand." "Then help me understand. Explain to me how you accidentally ended up in his bed twice a week for 4 months. Walk me through the mental gymnastics that made that seem okay." She couldn't. She sat there crying and making excuses that didn't add up to anything resembling sense. Every word out of her mouth made it worse. Finally, I stood up. "I'm going to pack a bag. I'll be staying at Jake's for a while." "No!" She jumped up, grabbing my arm. "Please don't leave. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend this never happened? Pretend I don't know what you look like when you're happy? And it's not with me?" That stopped her cold. "I saw the photos, Maribel. All of them. You look happier with him in 4 months than you've looked with me in 2 years. So maybe this isn't the tragedy you think it is. Maybe this is just the truth finally coming out." I pulled my arm free and headed for the bedroom. She followed, still talking, still making promises she couldn't keep. I packed methodically, a week's worth of clothes, my toiletries, my laptop charger, the essentials for a life that no longer included her. "What about us?" she asked as I zipped up the bag. "What about our marriage?" I looked at her standing there in the doorway of our bedroom, makeup streaked down her cheeks, wearing the dress she'd worn to seduce another man. She looked small and broken, and nothing like the woman I'd married. "What marriage?" I said. "You ended that 4 months ago. I'm just making it official." I walked past her toward the front door. She called after me, but I didn't turn around. I had one more stop to make before I went to Jake's. The drive to Landon's apartment complex took 15 minutes. He lived in one of those new luxury buildings downtown, the kind with a doorman and a parking garage and rent that cost more than most people's mortgages. His Tesla was in its assigned spot, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I sat in my car for a long time, looking at that car and thinking about Jake's words. Natural, logical consequences. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out my keys. The house key I wouldn't need anymore. I got out of my car and walked over to his Tesla. The key made a satisfying scraping sound as it traveled from the front bumper to the rear taillight. I took my time, making sure the groove was deep enough to require a full repaint. When I was finished, I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Then I sent it to Maribel with a simple message. "Tell Landon this is just the beginning." I drove to Jake's feeling lighter than I had in hours. The first move had been made. The game was officially on. Pioneer Courthouse Square was busy for a Saturday afternoon. Tourists and locals mixed in the usual Portland blend of flannel and fleece, everyone clutching coffee cups and checking their phones. I spotted Sienna immediately. She was sitting on a bench near the fountain, wearing dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She looked up as I approached, and I could see my reflection in her lenses. I looked tired. I looked angry. I looked like a man who'd spent the night at his friend's gym, sleeping on a couch that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. "You came," she said. "You said this wasn't over. I'm curious what that means." She patted the bench beside her. "Sit. We need to talk." I remained standing. "I'm good here." She smiled, the same predatory expression I'd seen at the party. Suit yourself, but you might want to sit down for this. Against my better judgment, I sat. She turned to face me, pulling off her sunglasses to reveal eyes that were bright with something that might have been excitement. First things first, she said. I'm sorry about last night. The kiss. That wasn't about you. Then what was it about? Revenge. The word hung between us like a loaded gun. See, your wife and I have a complicated history. We've been friends since college, but friendship with Maribel is transactional. She takes what she needs and gives back just enough to keep you around. I'm not interested in your relationship drama, Sienna. You should be. Because 3 years ago, Maribel cost me a job. A good job. She told my potential employer that I was unreliable, that I had a drinking problem, that I'd slept with a client. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. The offer was rescinded. I frowned. Why would she do that? Because she wanted the job for herself, and she got it. The job that launched her influencer marketing career, that was supposed to be mine. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I didn't like. So you've been planning this for 3 years? Not planning, waiting for the right opportunity to show her what real betrayal feels like. She leaned closer. When she started sleeping with Landon, I knew I had my chance. You knew about the affair? I helped orchestrate it. Her smile was cold now, all pretense of friendship gone. Who do you think suggested that conference in Seattle? Who do you think made sure they ended up at the same hotel bar? Who do you think has been feeding Landon information about Maribel's schedule for the past 4 months? The world tilted sideways. You set this up. I created the opportunity. They made the choice. She stood up, smoothing down her coat. But here's the thing, Cole. I'm not done. Last night was just the opening move. Maribel destroyed my career, so I'm going to destroy her life. Piece by piece, starting with her marriage. You already did that. Did I? Because from what I hear, she spent all night begging you to come back. She's going to fight for you, Cole. She's going to try to spin this as a mistake, a moment of weakness, a temporary lapse in judgment. She's going to make you the villain for not forgiving her. I thought about Maribel's tears, her promises, her desperate attempts to explain the unexplainable. So what do you want from me? I want you to help me finish what we started. I want you to help me make sure she loses everything. I'm not interested in being your weapon, Sienna. Even if I told you there's more, things you don't know yet. Despite myself, I was curious. Like what? She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Like the fact that she's been telling people you're abusive, that you control her money, monitor her activities, threaten her when she doesn't do what you want. She showed me a series of text messages. Maribel talking to friends, to co-workers, painting a picture of a marriage that bore no resemblance to reality. He checks my phone constantly. I'm afraid to tell him when I go out. He threatened to leave me if I took that promotion. None of it was true. All of it was damning. She's been building a narrative, Sienna continued, setting up her defense for when this all came out. Poor Maribel, trapped in an abusive marriage, finding comfort in the arms of a man who actually cares about her. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists to make it stop. There's more. She's been in touch with a divorce attorney. She's planning to file first, claim emotional abuse, go for half of everything plus alimony. She swiped to another screen. Email exchanges with a law firm, discussions about asset division and spousal support. She's not the victim here, Cole. She's the predator, and she's been planning to destroy you long before last night. I stared at the evidence, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. Not just anger anymore, something sharper, something that tasted like revenge. What do you want me to do? Sienna's smile was triumphant. I want you to be smart. I want you to be ruthless. And I want you to help me make sure that when this is over, Maribel Clark has nothing left. She stood up, putting her sunglasses back on. Think about it, Cole. But don't think too long. She's already 3 moves ahead of you." She walked away, leaving me sitting on the bench with my thoughts and the taste of betrayal burning in my mouth. My phone buzzed, a text from Maribel. "I've made an appointment with a marriage counselor. Tuesday at 3. Please say you'll come." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it without responding. The game was changing, and I was finally ready to play. Monday morning brought a new reality. I sat in my cubicle at the software company, staring at lines of code that might as well have been hieroglyphics. My coworkers kept glancing at me with the kind of careful concern usually reserved for people who might snap at any moment. "You look like hell," said Marcus, the guy in the cube next to mine. "Everything okay?" "Just peachy," I muttered, turning back to my screen. The truth was, I hadn't slept more than 2 hours since Friday night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maribel's face, heard Sienna's words, felt the weight of betrayal settling deeper into my bones. My phone buzzed. Another text from Maribel. "Please call me. We need to talk." I'd gotten 17 similar messages since Saturday. I'd ignored them all. At lunch, I drove to Landon's office building. He worked for some tech startup that burned through venture capital faster than they could raise it. The kind of place where everyone called themselves entrepreneurs and wore hoodies to board meetings. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to see him, to put a face on the man who'd been sleeping with my wife while I worked late to pay for the life she was living behind my back. I didn't have to wait long. He emerged from the building at 12:30, probably heading to some overpriced lunch spot where they served deconstructed sandwiches on artisanal bread. He looked exactly like I'd expected. Tall, conventionally handsome, wearing jeans that cost more than my monthly car payment. He was on his phone, talking loudly about some deal that was going to revolutionize the marketplace. The kind of corporate speak that meant nothing and promised everything. I followed him for 3 blocks, staying far enough back to avoid detection. He went into a trendy bistro, the kind of place where they served tiny portions on enormous plates. Through the window, I watched him order without looking at the menu, the casual confidence of someone who'd never had to check prices. This was the man my wife had chosen over me, this walking cliché in designer jeans and Italian leather shoes. My phone rang. Jake. "Where are you?" he asked without preamble. "Downtown, having lunch." "Bullshit. You're stalking that guy, aren't you?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Get back here, now, before you do something stupid." "I'm not going to— Now, Cole." I hung up and took one last look at Landon through the restaurant window. He was laughing at something on his phone, probably a message from Maribel. The sight made my stomach turn. I drove back to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every line of code looked like evidence of my own failures. Every bug I found felt like a metaphor for my marriage, something broken that I should have caught earlier. At 5 o'clock, I gave up and went to Jake's gym. He was training a kid who couldn't have been more than 16, teaching him how to throw a proper jab. "Keep your guard up," Jake was saying. "Always protect yourself. The moment you drop your hands is the moment you get hurt." Good advice for boxing, better advice for marriage. When the session ended, Jake walked over to where I was sitting on the bench. "You look like you want to hit something," he said. "I want to hit someone." That's a dangerous road, my friend. Once you start down that path, it's hard to find your way back. Maybe I don't want to find my way back. Jake sat down beside me. "You know what your problem is. You're thinking like a victim. You're reacting instead of acting. You're letting them control the narrative. So what do you suggest?" "I suggest you get smart. You said that Sienna woman has evidence of your wife's lies, right? Use it. You said your wife's been painting you as abusive. Prove otherwise. You said she's planning to take you to the cleaners and divorce court. Beat her to the punch." "How?" "You're a tech guy. You know how systems work. Well, people are systems too. They have vulnerabilities, weak points, places where the right pressure applied at the right time can cause a complete failure." He stood up and grabbed a pair of boxing gloves from a nearby hook. Put these on. Jake, I don't want to. Put them on. I strapped on the gloves and followed him to the heavy bag. He held it steady while I threw half-hearted punches. Harder, he said. I hit it harder. Harder. I put my weight behind it, feeling the impact travel up my arms. Now, imagine that bag is everyone who's lied to you, everyone who's betrayed you, everyone who thinks you're weak. I hit it again, harder this time. That's your wife, lying to your face for 4 months. Another punch, with real force behind it. That's her boyfriend, laughing about what a fool you are. The bag shook under the impact. That's everyone at that party, watching your humiliation like it was entertainment. I was hitting the bag in earnest now, sweat starting to bead on my forehead. And that's you, taking it all lying down like a good little victim. I hit the bag so hard that Jake had to brace himself to keep it steady. Better, he said. Now you're getting angry. Anger is useful as long as you control it instead of letting it control you. I stepped back, breathing hard. My knuckles ached inside the gloves. Feel better? Actually, yeah. Good. Now let's talk strategy. We spent the next hour planning. Jake had a devious mind when he wanted to, and he wanted to badly. By the time we were finished, I had a roadmap for the complete destruction of my wife's carefully constructed lies. It was going to take time. It was going to take patience. And it was going to require me to become someone I'd never been before, someone who fought back. I drove home to the apartment I'd shared with Maribel, knowing it would probably be the last time. She was there, waiting for me with dinner and apologies and promises that meant nothing. Cole, she said as I walked through the door, I'm so glad you're here. I made your favorite, chicken parmesan with... Pack your things, I said quietly. What? Pack your things and get out. Tonight. Her face went white. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. This is my home too. Not anymore. The lease is in my name. The utilities are in my name. You want to live with your boyfriend so badly? Go live with him. She started crying again, the same manipulative tears that had worked on me for years. They didn't work anymore. Please don't do this, she sobbed. I love you. No, I said, walking past her toward the bedroom. You love the idea of me. You love having someone to pay the bills while you play house with someone else. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 4 months sleeping with another man. I started throwing her clothes into suitcases, not caring if they wrinkled or tore. She followed me, still crying, still begging, still making promises she couldn't keep. I'll call the police, she threatened when she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. Go ahead. Tell them how your husband found out about your affair and asked you to leave. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic. She didn't call the police. She packed her bags and left, slamming the door behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in the sudden silence of the empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had been built on lies. Tomorrow I would start building something new, something true, something that would make them all regret the day they decided to cross Cole Turner. 3 weeks later, everything was ready. I'd spent every evening after work and every weekend building my case like I was debugging the world's most complex software. Every lie documented, every contradiction highlighted, every piece of evidence cross-referenced and verified. Sienna had been true to her word, providing me with access to information I never could have gathered on my own. Text messages, emails, financial records, even audio recordings of conversations where Maribel had discussed her plans to take Cole for everything he's worth. The marriage counseling appointment had come and gone. I'd shown up, much to Maribel's surprise and relief, but not for the reasons she'd hoped. I'd spent the session calmly presenting evidence of her affair while she sat there in stunned silence. The counselor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Peterson, had looked increasingly uncomfortable as the session progressed. I think we need to address the underlying issues in your relationship, Dr. Peterson had said diplomatically. The underlying issue, I'd replied, is that my wife has been cheating on me for 4 months while telling her friends that I'm abusive. There's nothing to address. There's nothing to save. I just wanted a witness to her reaction when confronted with the truth. Maribel had broken down completely, admitting everything in front of a licensed professional. Dr. Peterson's notes would be useful in divorce proceedings. Now, 3 weeks later, I was ready for the final move. The influencer marketing conference was being held at the downtown Hilton. Maribel's entire professional network would be there. Colleagues, clients, potential employers. It was the kind of event where reputations were made and broken, where one wrong move could end a career. Sienna had gotten me a press pass. Apparently, she had connections in the industry that went deeper than just friendship with Maribel. She'd also provided me with something else, access to the conference's AV system. "You're sure about this?" Jake asked as we sat in his car outside the hotel. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment she decided to cheat on me," I replied. "This is just making it official." I walked into the hotel lobby wearing a borrowed suit and carrying a laptop bag that contained everything I needed. The conference was in full swing, hundreds of people networking and schmoozing in the kind of aggressive way that characterized the marketing industry. I spotted Maribel immediately. She was holding court near the registration desk, laughing too loudly at someone's joke, her smile bright and fake as a billboard. She'd lost weight since I'd kicked her out, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Landon was there too, standing close enough to her that their relationship was obvious to anyone paying attention. He had his hand on her lower back, a possessive gesture that made my jaw clench. I made my way to the AV control booth, flashing my press credentials to the bored-looking technician who was monitoring the screens. "I need to upload a presentation," I said, holding up a USB drive. "Last-minute addition to the afternoon panel." He barely looked up from his phone. "Whatever, just don't mess with the settings." I plugged in the drive and uploaded my files to the system. It took less than 5 minutes to replace the scheduled presentation with my own. Then I found a seat in the back of the main conference room and waited. The afternoon panel was titled, "Building Authentic Relationships in Digital Marketing." The irony wasn't lost on me. Maribel was one of the featured speakers, discussing the importance of trust and transparency in influencer partnerships. She spoke eloquently about the need for honesty in all professional relationships, about how authenticity was the foundation of successful marketing. I almost felt bad about what was coming next. Almost. When she finished her portion of the presentation and clicked to advance to the next slide, the screen didn't show marketing statistics or case studies. It showed a photo of her and Landon in bed together. The auditorium went silent. Maribel stared at the screen in horror, frantically clicking her remote as if she could make the image disappear. But I'd locked the presentation. The only way to stop it was to cut power to the entire system. The next slide was a screenshot of text messages. Maribel telling Landon how much she hated her boring husband and couldn't wait to take him for everything and start fresh. The slide after that showed financial records, evidence that she'd been using our joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners with her lover. The audience was starting to murmur now, a low buzz of shock and disapproval that grew louder with each new revelation. "Turn it off!" Maribel screamed at the AV technician. "Turn it off right now!" But the damage was done. Her professional reputation was destroyed in front of everyone who mattered in her industry. The woman who'd built her career on authenticity and trust had been exposed as a fraud and a cheat. I stood up and walked toward the exit, passing close enough to the stage to catch her eye. When she saw me, her face went from pale to ashen. "You?" she whispered. "Me," I confirmed. "How could you do this?" "Easy. I learned from the best." I walked out of the conference room and through the hotel lobby, ignoring the chaos I'd left behind. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts, but I didn't check them. I had one more stop to make. Landon's Tesla was in the hotel parking garage, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I walked over to it slowly, savoring the moment. The car alarm started wailing as soon as I put my fist through the driver's side window. Glass scattered across the concrete, sparkling like diamonds in the harsh light. I reached inside and unlocked the door, then popped the hood. It took me less than 5 minutes to disconnect the battery and pour a bottle of corn syrup into the oil reservoir. The car would start, but it wouldn't run for long. I was walking back to the garage exit when I heard footsteps running behind me. "Hey! Hey!" I turned around to see Landon sprinting toward me, his face red with rage. He was still wearing his conference badge, his suit jacket flapping behind him like broken wings. "You snake!" he yelled. "What did you do to my car?" "I gave it the same treatment you gave my marriage," I replied calmly. He swung at me, a wild haymaker that would have connected if I hadn't spent the last 3 weeks learning how to fight from Jake. I ducked under his punch and drove my fist into his solar plexus, doubling him over. "That's for 4 months of lies," I said. He tried to tackle me, but I sidestepped and let his momentum carry him into the concrete wall. He hit it hard and slumped to the ground, dazed. "And that's for thinking you could steal my life without consequences." I walked away, leaving him sitting on the garage floor next to his ruined car. Behind me, I could hear sirens approaching. Someone had probably called the police about the commotion at the conference. I didn't care. I was done. I drove to Jake's gym and found him in his office, feet up on his desk, drinking a beer and watching the local news on his phone. "You made the evening report," he said without looking up. "Local woman's affair exposed at marketing conference? They're calling it a digital age public shaming? Good. Police are looking for you. Something about vandalism and assault. I figured they would be." Jake finally looked up. "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, I would have said yes. 3 weeks ago, I still believed in forgiveness and second chances and working things out like adults. But that was before I learned what my wife really thought of me, before I discovered how thoroughly I'd been played, before I realized that sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone else loses. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Maribel. "I hope you're happy now." I typed back, "I'm getting there." Then I turned off my phone and threw it in Jake's trash can. Tomorrow I would deal with lawyers and police reports and the aftermath of my revenge. Tonight, I was going to drink beer with my oldest friend and